PodcastCoug Season 7, Episode 7.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we're all things Cougar football, 30 minutes of Coug talk, and we took another loss in the Coliseum against USC 30-14 last Saturday, and now we are believing in a 9-in-a-row run against Oregon State Saturday night. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. No doubt USC was the better team, right? And in a lot of ways, it's a pretty classic Wazoo USC matchup from the past 100 years. It's competitive. We can hang with anybody. This is the 5th, 6th best team in the country, but you look at the overall record with SC, especially in the Coliseum, and like I said, it's a 4% chance of winning down there. And of course, the Trojans certainly have better athletes than the Cougs, no doubt. And but we did present some real problems, and for them, and then our offense. For the first time this season, the receivers couldn't get open. We had our own issues, right? Robert Farrell only had 3 receptions, and then, of course, we lost Renard Bell early on, and definitely that didn't help. The second half was pretty uneventful, right? I mean, where we picked up, 49 yards and 16 attempts, and so no real improvement on our offensive line. Just overall, our offense just isn't and wasn't really explosive. And like I said before, I don't think we'll hang 50 points on anybody this season. There's no way. Now maybe cupcake all day long. We could maybe eke out 50 points, but we limited Caleb Williams to 188 yards and 50% completion, so that's good. I mean, at least we kind of contained Caleb Williams, the great quarterback at SC, but we actually are able to run the ball, right? With 171 total yards, mostly with Jalen Jenkins. And, so funny, things really haven't changed at all. Ward is really good at times, right? Cam Ward at times, but other times, we're waiting for that next level, right? That just stay in the pocket, throw downfield, boom, hit your receivers downfield. And he's great with the Houdini and the scrambling stuff, but, we're just not seeing the complete overall picture. And so anyway, Oregon and USC are behind us, right, in the rear view mirror, and we can focus now on the backside of water, the back half of the schedule. Go down to Anaheim. You'll know what I mean. Remember that backside of water. You'll know exactly what I mean. In Anaheim, we're talking about Disneyland, right? So anyway, we got this back half of the schedule. Well, frankly, we can win out. I'm not concerned about Utah really at all coming up after our bye. And at least we're going to, win 4 out of 6. That's realistic, right? Assuming the team stays healthy, focused, just, healthy and focused, right? So when Nakia Watson went down, it was all Jalen Jenkins, like I said. And remember, Jalen is a true freshman. And he really has shown some moments of greatness. But interesting, he had our best game against SC in the Coliseum. Against USC last Saturday, it was 133 yards and 13 carries. So, he really couldn't run the ball. I mean, he had some moments of greatness, and I was really excited to see Jalen really with Nakia, but super excited that he was able to run against SC. And it was the first 100-yard rushing game by a freshman since Boobie Williams back in 2016, right? So, and Boobie was a redshirt, so making Jenkins his achievement even more impressive. on computer, right? So, Jenkins really stepped up against playing with the Trojans. And anyway, interesting to note that, we were the only Power 5 offer, Washington State. I think it was his size, 5'7", 177 pounds. But, you have the right stuff. And if you have the right stuff, you have the right stuff. Now, I'm not so sure, for the next level. I mean, it's pretty competitive in the running back. So we're not saying this guy's, going to the next level, but for a college running back, at least we've got, and of course we have some issues on depth on the running back. There's right behind him is a couple of walk-ons. So Nakia is going to be out for a little bit, but for a couple of weeks we'll talk about that. But yeah, Jalen Jenkins, Pac-12 Freshman Player of the Week. Very cool. So Cam Ward just didn't have and possibly will never have Anthony Gordon's numbers. I'm a big AG fan. I'm Anthony Gordon all the way. Every single Cougar great quarterback. Anthony Gordon's my favorite. He's my go-to, and we'll never see AG numbers out of Cam Ward at all. Honestly, I think Eric Morris just. In my opinion, I'm wondering if he belongs on this level. You look at his interviews. I think this is a little bit too much for him. Not that he can't coach. Don't get me wrong, but you really need some elite coaching here, right? And I'm not so sure. Well, we're just not as explosive. We just don't have the numbers that that AG had, or Luke, or Gardner, or anybody really. So, we're looking at 30 points a game, 27, 24, 30, 32, but nothing like 50 or 45. I would be shocked, Now at the FCS level, yes, of course. What a standout, right? So, it's okay. It's what we have. It's what we got. We got, our defense continues to be strong. But Cam Ward was constantly under pressure with USC, which is, it's not easy, especially against the Trojans in that environment. But his stats weren't anything special. So we just didn't make, although he didn't make any huge mistakes like the previous week, right? No picks, no interceptions. So going forward, we've got to transition from the guy who doesn't hurt the team to the guy who gets his team in the win column, and I'm confident, right? I mean, Cam Ward can get us there, but let's face it, like I said, we're not going to hang 50 points on anybody this season, right? Deion Henley, dude, we need you, right? Especially to step up for Oregon State. We need you to come back and get ready for Corvallis, the Willamette Valley. Most beautiful area, man. It's such a beautiful scene when you go into the Willamette Valley. Beautiful area. We're going to talk about Oregon State, of course, on the second half of the podcast, Coug. But, we starters, Renard Bell and Armani Marsh and Nakia Watson all out for a few weeks due to injury. So, winning in the Coliseum, it's about a 4% chance of leaving there with a victory. I was hoping literally it would be this year, really. But, it's that 4%, so working against us. So this team is absolutely capable of winning 8 games this year and making a good season, good postseason game, and which really we're only springboarding for next year. If you look at Jake Dickert, he is building. And we're in a somewhat, not necessarily a rebuild, a reload, but I like what Dickert is doing. And I think we're going to bring in some great guys. We've got fear from everybody in the Pac-12. Every team fears us, no doubt, because we're hanging and playing tough with everybody. So Dickert is slowly building a foundation of greatness. And for the recruits that we pick up, no doubt. So we're heading into Oregon State, the Beavs in Corvallis, and we're going to talk about the Beavs next, right here on the second half of the Podcast Coug.
Hey, Coug fans, you're podcasting with James Laurie and the PodcastCoug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
The real estate agent you work with matters, and a great agent helps you own the home of your dreams. And your dreams come true with James Laurie at Coldwell Banker Bain, representing clients like you 24/7. From condos to colonials and everything in between. If you're selling, buying, need a price analysis, or just a contractor referral, ask James, winner of the 2015 through 2019 International Coldwell Banker Diamond Award, with dozens and dozens of 5-star Zillow reviews and Seattle Magazine's 5-star award winner for 2018 through 2020. James Laurie, Coldwell Banker Bain, at 425-466-3672 or jameslaurie.net. Rock solid results.
You're listening to the Podcast Coug.
Two running backs in with the quarterback. Signals called. All man in motion going through to the right side. Handoff. Wings out to the right side. Touchdown, Washington State.
You are listening to the Podcast Coug.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, where we're all things Cougar football, all things Cougs. Washington State at Oregon State, Corvallis, Reser Stadium, nearly all sold out. That's standing room only right now, and it's 6 p.m. Pac-12 networks. Washington State leads the series 56-46 and 3 ties, right? So last year, Cougs won 31-24 in Pullman, and game, like I said, almost sold. If not, it's almost sold out, right? Standing room only, and checking third-party websites. Cheapest tickets right now, all third-party websites. I don't know, StubHub or Ticketmaster, or you name it, all these third-party vendors, $200 gets you in your cheapest seat at Reser, and that we're talking end zone. So you're like $265 and up if you want to get out of the end zone. So it's all supply and demand. It's like anything else. It's like real estate. It's like cars. Or anything else in life, supply and demand. And the thing about Reser and Oregon State and Corvallis and the Beavs and Willamette Valley, those guys down there are fired up. They don't always get 4-2 seasons at this point. If you look back, I mean, they've been to one bowl game in Jonathan Smith's 5-year career or tenure at Oregon State. So think about when the Cougs had that drought of bowl games prior to Mike Leach, right? I mean, it was like, just brutal getting tickets, right? Or you just, I mean, everybody was on the bandwagon. It was just crazy. That's where they're at. They are literally about 8 years behind us, 10 years behind us, in my opinion. So their fans are just, because for 40 years, right? Parker Stadium. I mean, I don't know how many listeners can remember this if you go back, but all through the 70s and 80s, Oregon State, was lucky to win 3 games a year in the Pac-10. And they were just a doormat. I mean, they were the worst team year after year after year. They just couldn't get guys. I mean, they had a high school stadium, almost Parker Stadium. Now Washington, Martin Stadium isn't prior to the upgrade. We didn't have the greatest stadium either, but we've always been a better program, football speaking. Now I have to agree with their marketing that Corvallis is the greatest college town in the conference in terms of probably just cosmetics or the entire feel. When you go into Corvallis and the Willamette Valley, it's just beautiful. I mean, the Palouse is so nice, but there's a special feeling when you head into Oregon State. I'm not a big fan of orange and black colors or their logo. I think that's another thing. I think our logo just kicks butt over everybody as far as fear and respect. Fear the Cougar head logo. I mean, it's true. I mean, it's all about the logo. So not necessarily. Look at Alabama, look at how crazy their helmets are, and look at how no names on the back at SC or Notre Dame or even so. It just depends. But not a big fan of some of their colors or some of their logos. It reeks. It doesn't reek anything but greatness, okay? But they are improving, and all hats off to Jonathan Smith. And they're fired up. The fans are literally fired up. I think they're going to come away very disappointed on Saturday night. And but like I said, sold out. Now, how you get in the stadium? And I'm thinking about heading down there. Why not? It's so fun. You just hang out right outside the stadium. You're going to get in for $20, $40. Sounds about right. You've got people who are not paying attention to the market, the online market, and their buddies don't show up. They got extra tickets, and here you go, $20, $40. Now, obviously you may not be sitting in that Coug section, but I love sitting near between the 40s. It's so fun, and you've got all that. You've got other guys around. You got so many Cougs around, and you got the Beavers. So anyway, Beavers, speaking about the Beavs, they're picked preseason 5th in the conference, right behind Utah, Oregon, USC, and UCLA. And they were picked ahead of both Washington and Washington State, if you remember that preseason, right? So first time this season, Washington State, we're playing back-to-back road games, right, heading into Corvallis. Similar outcomes with our losses that the Beavers have faced, identical 4-2 overall record, 1-2 in the conference, having that close loss at home to USC and a blowout loss to Utah on the road for Oregon State. So, right, they've got their losses, USC and Utah, and they had a close loss against SC. In Corvallis, but they struggled all night with Stanford last Saturday night, right? Before that shocking 56-yard touchdown pass with 13 seconds remaining, they eked it out past Stanford by 1 point. And that was, whether it's luck or the stars lining up, I mean, they're very fortunate to come out of that stadium a victory last Saturday night. I mean, they were behind the entire game. Stanford Couged it. So can you imagine? Speaking about Stanford, kind of going off track here because this isn't really a long episode of the podcast, Coug. We were just reading the other day. It's interesting on the portal with the transfer. Everybody's just, trying to take advantage of skill players and bringing in guys from transferring from portals into every program almost in the Pac-12. And we're, if you look at all the quarterbacks, 9 out of the 12 quarterbacks they're all transfer quarterbacks in the portal. But who has the most difficult time taking advantage of that portal transfer? Whether it's a JC or an FCS guy that's shining out or somebody that's not in a Power 5 that wants to get into Power 5. Guess who has the biggest challenge of all using the portal successfully? Yep, that would be Stanford. Their level of academics and requirements to get in just at Stanford, you're walking on water, right? So that's a challenge. They would love to go out and get some guys, but you also have to qualify academically. And that sounds like every other program will accept you if you have a 3.0 or a 2.8. That might be true, but Stanford, you're not getting in with a 3.0. You're not getting in with a 3.5. Now, if you're an elite football player, I don't know if they would make exceptions on a 3.5 GPA, but Stanford is Stanford. It's Harvard, right? Harvard of the West Coast. So that's interesting. Never thought about the portal and how it's affecting Stanford, and that's a challenge because that eliminates a ton of people unless they have really been diligent in their academics, right? Even from high school. So anyway, Cougs and the Beavs both started 3-0, right? We were both started a great 3-0 season. Of course, we upset Wisconsin, and the Beavs dominated Boise State, and they survived Fresno State. So both teams, we both lost to SC, and the Cougs lost to Oregon, while the Beavs lost to Utah. And the biggest difference is while the Cougs rolled Cal, Berkeley and Pullman, are only Pac-12 wins so far, Oregon State needed an unbelievable come-from-behind play to survive Stanford on Saturday night, which is their only Pac-12 win. So we blew out Cal easy, and Oregon State really has struggled. I'm not really concerned about Saturday night unless our guys are not showing up. But Dickert knows how to get people ready to play. I mean, were they looking ahead? Was Oregon State, on that Stanford game, were they looking ahead to the Coug game? I doubt it. We've beaten the Beavs, 8 straight times. Jonathan Smith continues to try again, beating the Cougs. It's a pretty big milestone for Oregon State. And as odd that might sound, we have their number year after year after year. They've knocked off everybody else in the conference. They've knocked off just everybody else. Maybe I think they even beat USC a few years ago. But you're talking about the Huskies and the Ducks and all of the California schools, Northern California, the Arizona schools. So they have not beat us. And that's 8 in a row. And yeah, Jonathan Smith hasn't beat us in his 5 years, so it should be a good one. And did you know that Oregon State does rely on their running game? They're averaging 181 yards a game. Now that's down a little bit from 211 from last year, but they're really running the ball. And my concerns are the questions at their quarterback, because Chance Nolan, their starter, is out. He's sidelined, injured. So Oregon State won't name a starting quarterback quite yet. I think right before game time. But we saw a freshman, Ben Gulbranson, made his first Oregon State start last Saturday night at Stanford. So the Beavs, they've got playmakers at wide receivers, at Harrison and Anthony Gould, but the issue has been getting the ball into their hands, these receivers, so their secondary is just solid, but the front seven has struggled to generate pressure. Just 6 sacks and 29 tackles for loss. So our offensive line, the Cougs, has been a roller coaster, but this could be an opportunity to look great on Saturday night, no doubt. Our offensive line, we're going to look great. And, we just got to flush out SC, prepare for another road game, again, at a sold-out Reser Stadium. So everybody needs to step up, do their job, stay focused, be ready, and make some big plays. And against USC, it felt like you had to play exceptional to win that game. I mean, just exceptional with everything going for you, and including turnovers, which really didn't happen in the Coliseum. But against Oregon State, just play good football, solid football, make plays and force some turnovers. I think we're going to see it on Saturday. So the Beavers secondary features veterans Rajon Wright, one of the best corners that covers one of the best cover cornerbacks in the conference, right? So Wright has a pair of interceptions and 3 pass breakups, and Wright can do everything, and he's a good tackler. So, okay, right. So remember, Jonathan Smith in his 5 years hasn't beaten the Cougs ever, right? Let's make it 9 in a row Saturday. And I might just be there. I feel like a road trip. I might be there. I do have a room reserved, but I'm still kind of iffy if I'm going down, but it's road trips are fun. I love going down to Corvallis. Hey, that's it for episode 7 of the 7th season of the Podcast Coug. Thank you so much for listening. It's Washington State and Oregon State. God bless and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at PodcastCoug.com.
N G T